Great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back from coffee to this second session of the day. My name is Pierre Dandjinou, and I'll be moderating this session on Africa digital economy. And then I'll be having this panel of quite brilliant, experts in the field, and they will be actually introducing themselves quickly before we really start. Maybe I can just, highlight a few things that we all certainly know, but when it comes to digital economy, today we will be hearing that Africa is, what I say, leapfrogging, whatever. Figures are there to demonstrate that Africa, in terms of mobile telephony, is occupying maybe second, rank in terms of possession of those telephones. And also Africa is a place where you are having many initiatives, innovation is thriving. Yesterday we heard that, okay, you'll be talking about something like 5,000 startups, whatever, or incubators in Africa. You have figures and things and saying that, okay, things are happening, that digital transformation is happening in Africa. So them, ITU is publishing some of the statistics, but many other institutions are working on that. I also know about this World Bank, in fact, Africa, project that they call, the Africa Digital Economy Moonshot. I don't know whether you know about it, you heard about it. But it's all about, debating about the digital economy in Africa and probably condition, for making it, sustainable and whatever you like. But our panel here and is going to discuss something which probably has never been actually discussed before, which is when you talk about digital economy, how do you link this with the domain name, industry, definitely. And that's a challenge, I would think. And in fact, when we were selecting this film, for our 7th edition of this, building trust in the African DNS industry for a thriving digital economy, I was seeing this as a kind of challenge, actually. And we need to demonstrate what is possible and what is not, and what are the conditions, here. The other thing which is quite interesting, and I think we had the Africa Union yesterday talking about it, I think, is this the whole issue of the free trade or the free zone, the African free zone, which is quite good sort of thing. And I got some notes on it, and I would like to quickly share. Of course, there is no mention of a domain name, actually, this thing, but the mention of digital economy. So this is about, the AFCT, which is the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is a trade agreement which is in force, between 27 African countries. Now it has been ratified by 22, states, which is that definitely is effective now, which is as of the 7th of July, where the last countries ratified. Now this AFC FTE now is operational. I mean, it's going to be operational again because there are few works being done on it. Question here is, how far digital economy is going to be part of this, and how much of the DNS economy, can one think, could also be going there. And some of the things people talk about when they discuss digital economy in Africa, also is about, what are the conditions. You heard the Botswana, the PS yesterday. I think she was also talking about some of the prerequisites. She talked about the infrastructure. She talked about, universal access, and she also talked about, content development, local content development. You go to the World Bank, to Africa Development, Bank, even to the it boils down to 3 to 5 keywords. Okay, it's about human resources, skills that you want to develop for digital economy. It boils down to your broadband, your infrastructure, strategy. Boils down also to your policy that you put in place. Something that we don't insist on, that's for me, which is regulations. I do believe that regulators are key in this, and we'll be demonstrating this sometime. So these are some of the things I wanted to quickly highlight before I really hand over to my panelists to quickly self-introduce, and then we'll be going through some of the questions that we have for them. So I would like to start, my right here, quick introduction that we know exactly who you are, and eventually what your special take that you have on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pierre. I am David Njuki. I'm here representing AFRINIC, Africa Network Information Center. And just mentioned earlier on, it's when Barack involved me in this topic. Our approach was a bit challenging in terms of how, as AFRINIC, how do we approach a digital economy, the conversation for digital economy. So for us as AFRINIC, we're on the IP side. So I guess we're stakeholders in this conversation. So I'm looking forward to the discussions and seeing how we can position and structure ourselves in terms of this conversation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Nii?
Yeah, I'm Nii Quaynor. In a way, I span both the registry world and also the registrar world. In the registry side, I do work with IOPRIS GH, and also I'm closely associated with .Africa. But I'm also an accredited ICANN registrar. I'm of the opinion that we should be building organizations that can transcend the waves. And so it's not just one wave, there are multiple waves coming, and we need to build institutions that allow us to move across as the transitions occur. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nii. Transcending the waves, I like this. Yes, Alice, please.
I'm Alice Munyua. I'm representing Mozilla Corporation. Mozilla is the owner of the very famous browser Firefox, even though Michele doesn't use it. But we have hundreds and millions of users around the world. And we really truly believe that the internet is a global resource, open and accessible to all. And a lot of that is reflected in what we do, in our products, in our mission. I work for the corporation itself. We have a foundation, a non-profit foundation that's the corporation that I work for. And I am the policy advisor for the Africa region. For us, the Africa digital economy and discussions around the single digital economy have been extremely important. We've been participating in several of the forums that have been taking place at the African Union Commission level, the Smart Africa Alliance, and the various regional economic communities. So this is really an important discussion. And like I think Pierre introduced here, we have to actually see how all of this links to the DNS sector industry. I don't know what to call it in the Africa region. And I think that's not a question that we can answer here. It's something I think we will need to discuss over the 1 hour and even longer term, because as he mentioned, it's the first time that we're having these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Yes, our friend from Botswana.
Well, Mani, Tsoganetso Kepaletswe. I'm from BOCRA, which is the Communication Regulatory Authority. And maybe a brief introduction. BOCRA is responsible in Botswana for the regulation of the telecommunication, broadcasting, postal, and internet-related matters. And we do that under an act which is called the Communication Regulatory Act. But in addition to this, BOCRA has many heads also, which is the government has asked them to do. Of course, one of the heads which is we are doing currently is we are also the CCTLD manager for the .bw, which means that we are registered for the .bw. But there is another act which is called the Electronic Communication and Transaction Act, which is basically facilitating e-commerce. And BOCRA also has a role under that act and is basically responsible for the accreditation of secure electronic signatures providers under that act. And the discussion which mainly, of course, it will be to link, to see how do we link the issues of the domain name with the issues of the electronic communication and transaction, because those are key when we come talk about the free trade zone, and we'll be basically looking at those to say, how do we actually link? Because one of the things which is very critical is about the digital ID. If we want people to trade online, how do we know who is not? And the issue is what kind of framework should we have in East Africa in terms of dealing with the issues of the digital ID. But in addition, we have another role, which is, of course, is basically under what we call the Electronic Records or Evidence Act. BOCRA is also responsible for the issue of certification of what we call electronic record system. In brief, that is the role which BOCRA is doing, but is basically here on the discussion is, like I indicated, is the issue of how do we actually see the domain name play a crucial role in terms of facilitating the Africa digital economy.
Thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Onkokane Mothobi.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Onkokane Mothobi, originally from Botswana, but I'm working in South Africa, Cape Town, for a company called Research ICT Africa, which is a regional ICT policy and regulation think tank in Africa. Research ICT Africa, we conduct surveys. Our main aim is to provide evidence-based policy, mostly using survey data. And in 2017, we conducted surveys across 10 African countries in partnership with with DESI in Latin America and and some countries in Asia. So in total, we conducted ICT surveys in 20 global south countries. And our main aim is to provide guidance to policy formulation in Africa using survey data. Our argument most of the time is that policy makers or regulators tend to use supply side data, which in most cases cannot be disaggregated to kind of inform policy on issues such as who's connected, gender inequalities, and digital inequalities. So we argue that survey data in most cases is the way to kind of formulate policies. And in terms of the digital economy, I think, as we all know, or as has been said by other presenters, we know that the unprecedented growth of mobile telecommunications have provided Africa, or most of Africans who could not access internet in the past due to a high cost of the fixed, are now connected due to smartphones. But even though smartphones or the cheap smartphones have been available, we still have most of Africans not connected into the internet, and most of them connecting via the smartphones, and making it very difficult for the domain market to actually grow in this in the African market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I wanted you to still continue because we now would like to proceed with a kind of overview, of the situation. What are we talking about when we mean, digital economy in Africa? So the idea is I will be just putting you a few questions, of course, and then we'll be having something like 45 minutes of discussion before we hand over to the audience for questions. So please, if you can just proceed with and tell us, provide again this overview of whatever initiatives can be highlighted in Africa, so that we could derive some sort of lessons learned and eventually see what are the challenges.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, then Alice.
Thank you, Chair. As of 2011, the digital economy actually contributed around $193 billion to total world economy output and created around 6 million jobs. Mobile technologies and services generated around 1.7% of GDP, amounting to about 110 billion in sub-Saharan African countries. And all this, so through the internet, Africa can actually create a single digital market and optimize on the Continental Free Trade Agreement. Africa can leverage on the internet and other digital platforms to provide the necessary service, such as financial services through the fintech industry for inclusivity. However, the foundations of the digital economy are mainly connectivity, usage, digital skills, awareness, and fully integrated digital infrastructure. A state that Africa has not yet reached. An after access survey conducted by Research ICT Africa shows that almost or about 28% of Africans are connected to the internet, which means almost 70% are not connected to the internet and they are not contributing or participating in the digital economy. The survey finds that internet penetration or the digital economy, there is some kind of correlation between GNI per capita and internet use, with high income countries more likely to have high internet than low income countries. And this is more likely to exacerbate the inequalities, income inequalities in terms of countries or even within countries. So as I've mentioned, we conducted surveys in 20 global South countries, which include the Latin American countries, South Asian countries, and 10 African countries. And our finding shows that about more than 80% of people in Argentina have access to the internet. More than 73% have access to the internet in Paraguay and other Paraguay and other countries. But in Africa, we find that South Africa, among the surveyed countries, South Africa is the only country with a 53% internet penetration, while Ghana, Kenya, and Nigeria, some of the largest markets, have internet penetration at 27, 28, 29. This is despite Kenya releasing their statistics, the Kenyan Regulatory Authority releasing statistics that shows that 78% of Kenyans have access to the internet. And this is one of the challenges why in Africa we are having problems in terms of when it comes to policy formulation, because most of the time we tend to depend on the supply side data. The supply side data, which in most of the time tend to inflate penetration levels in Africa, mainly because most of African people, due to the high cost of communication, tend to use a number of mobile SIM cards. And therefore, when we kind of use this aggregated supply side data, we kind of inflating the actual penetration rates in Africa. Our survey also shows that despite hype of Rwanda being seen as one of the most developed in terms of connectivity and all stuff, with more than 90% of the country having 90% penetration, connectivity of 4G LTE, we find that only 10% of Rwandans use internet. And this is serious. And while in Tanzania, and we find that only in Tanzania 10% use the internet, and 14% in Uganda also. A quick search of the internet revealed that there were approximately 329.3 million domain names registered globally in 2016, with the .com and network TLC having a combined total of around about 142 million domain names registered in their base. However, the domain name market, which was estimated to have an annual value of around 52 million by ICANN in Africa, has largely remained small in Africa, mainly due to low levels of internet penetration in the continent. As of 2017, the number of registered domains were around 5.8, and I think yesterday 5.1 million, and I think there have been some suggestions yesterday that today they are around 6.1 million. This is almost about 1.3%, 1.6% of the total domain names globally. As mentioned by speakers yesterday, the success of domain name is highly dependent on the use of internet by business and individuals. The After Access survey conducted by Research Africa shows that internet among small businesses is very low, standing at about 7% in 10 African countries. South Africa and Senegal found to be the only countries with internet penetration among small businesses higher than 20%, while internet use in other countries, which include Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Nigeria, Senegal, Lesotho, have internet penetration among small business entrepreneurs that is less than 8%. Other than low internet use, the lack of innovation in the domain market has resulted in the domain sellers failing to take advantage of current market. From the demand side perspective, which provides a better understanding of issues affecting digital economy, internet use and domain market affordability of both services and internet-enabled devices remain a major challenge in Africa. The After Access survey also shows that digital skills and lack of awareness are the major inhibitors of both the internet use and uptake of digital service and platforms, such as the domain names in Africa. In summary, there is a need for policymakers in Africa to identify a strategy that will deliver a robust and cost-effective broadband solutions to universal affordable broadband access. Develop model for the development of world-class open access national broadband networks through the harnessing of public and private sector contributions. Identify market structures and associated regulatory regime required to induce sufficient public and private investment in broadband extension. Identifies areas of methods of demand stimulation to ensure equitable and optimal use of broadband by all, including instruments to support the production of relevant content and design and development of applications. Thank you.
Thank you for this. We could note a few things there, and definitely the issue of data, statistics, validity or whatever. We'll come back on that. Alice, you wanted to add quickly something before I had a question for Nii.
Thank you very much for those, access statistics. They actually sound really dismal. And the worst thing is, as dismal as they sound, our policymakers then continue to make the most regressive policies and regulatory, frameworks. And one of them, like was spoken about yesterday, was the internet shutdowns that I believe has an effect on what we call the single digital economy. And then the most recent thing we've also seen is the taxation of social media, social media taxation that's having a really huge impact, especially when you consider that most of us from the Africa region tend to look at social media as our fast as the internet. And then really sad that we really don't yet have a way of measuring internet penetration in our continent that really reflects our own nuances and our own context, especially those in terms of, I would have a phone, but I have 3-4 SIM cards with different service providers, and why we continuously depend on the supply end to provide that data, I think is something that we are grappling with. And I think you'll notice that the Communications Commission, the Communication Authority of Kenya had paused or is no longer providing statistics on internet penetration, because we are still trying to understand what is the best framework to use to really determine our internet penetration. Having said that, very quickly on the issue of just generally the single digital economy, more, even frightening or more worrying statistics is we are talking about the Africa Continental Free Trade Zone, and yet we trade the least amongst ourselves in the continent. For example, if you look at Asia, we trade with, we only trade amongst ourselves, our trade, intra-regional trade is only 17%, versus when we trade with Asia, 59%. And with Europe, we trade at 69%. So essentially meaning that we have actually missed that opportunity to look at, to take advantage of that economic boom that other trade blocs tend to have, pretty easily. So worrying. And the fact that we launched the trade zone 2 weeks ago is not enough, because one of the biggest commitment was only committing to eliminating tariffs, and that has an effect even on the DNS sector. That's not enough. There's so much that's needed. The challenges, to do with from infrastructure to digital skills and digital businesses, to bringing governments online, because that's another big issue that we are not really dealing with. And how we bring the government online is also extremely important because of the lack of digital skills. And then infrastructure is another issue. And Kenya as well, through the Smart Africa Alliance, also launched the digital economy blueprint that we are hoping other African countries are going to adopt, that then leads to the bigger picture of the single digital economy. And those 5 blocks need to be adopted in a way that also makes sense. And then on top of that, we have our own, competing regional economic commissions. So we have ECOWAS in West Africa, we have, EAC, we have COMESA, we have SADC that are competing. So I think you're right in saying that really governments and policymakers need to sit down and look at this in terms of, the benefit, the importance for the Africa region at the moment, taking into consideration that when we're talking about the digital economy, we're talking about the internet, which is open, global. So how do we position ourselves to take advantage of that potential? Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. I think one of the challenges that was highlighted here was skill, lack of skills, digital skill development, and then illiteracy. Dr. Nii, certainly has things to tell us about, because he's also involved, in skill development. So Nii, please.
Well, thank you very much. I tend to take a very positive view of our situation. There was a time we did not even have any connections here in the early 90s. There was a time that we did not even have any domain names operating on the continent. So hearing all these things for me is great music to my ear. Hearing that you have a .Africa to support the free trade zone is an exciting thing for me. I actually think that the barriers that we have nothing to do with all the things mentioned. It has more to do with the rapid consolidation of the industry and the domination by the large multinationals of your markets. Those are the issues you have to deal with. And I'd like to ask some other questions before I respond. Do we really have a digital mindset yet? Do we have a digital life? And perhaps answering these questions is a real assignment to Africa. And additionally, how do we want to make the technical services pervasive? What is our approach? That's really what I want us to focus on, because from my point of view, all the numbers are positive, but you have different threats than the internal threats. Having said that, skills development, well, since 2000, we've been trying very hard to develop network operator skills. And we have been quite successful. Most of the leaders of variety of networks on the continent are being led by engineers that have passed through the program. So one more time for me, that's a very positive thing. We may ask for more, but at least we have the mechanisms there. We also have our universities beginning to, introduce more networking into their curriculum. So I see that as positive. We also have research and education networks emerging. You have Ubuntu Net Alliance. You have AFRINIC for the Northern region. You have WACREN for the Western Central Africa region. And they are rolling out networks which did not exist before. So from my point of view, we are making the strides. Now, we may need some help from the policy domain to strengthen these things or regulation to strengthen these things. But, we should take a much more positive approach to it. Now, having said that, I can tell you what my own organization is doing. Of course, our origins are from system integration, and I used to run a company that was shut down. So it's not that I like shutdowns. Okay, I was shut down. The company was a multi-million-dollar company doing $2.3 million at the time, was shut down in 2003. But that's not the point. After we turned around, we began to build, you might say, an information resource company, which is a registrar and continue to operate a GH. But we are looking at different things in a sense that we, for instance, work in the blockchain area, because there are new identifiers coming. We wish to understand what they are. We run an academy. We have projects looking at authenticated documents or even helping, for that matter, helping intellectual property owners, especially in the musical entertainment industry. We have crypto assets. We run crypto assets. We run exchanges. We also, do some mining. We also run our own currency called Stamp.Africa. I mean, I'm saying these things to illustrate that we need to go after the hard and difficult things. We run an IoT lab, which is supporting the creation of crypto ATMs or virtual to, cash to virtual systems and so on. And all these things require domain names from my point of view. And that is why I took the position that we rather should not be looking for the lowest hanging fruits. We should go after the difficult ones and try to break through. We look, let's learn from the developed country, but don't follow them. Learn from them and then try and devise your own solutions that you think will be able to help you, advance. Because if you follow, you will keep following. Okay, but if you can learn from their mistakes and then find your, solutions for them, you'll be okay. The fact that Belgium doesn't use domain names does not mean that you cannot have a policy that will make people use domain names here. Supposing identification was mentioned, supposing we said that everyone who registers for an identity must have an email address. I mean, these are very simple things. If you just say that, everyone will go and get domain name and get the address, and immediately your numbers will change. I'm not saying that's exactly what you should do, but I'm telling you that if you begin to follow what has been done already, you will remain follower. But if you begin to understand and learn from that, and then come out with your own solutions that will allow you to transcend, you'll be fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nii, for this.
Thank you for being positive, for being a disruptor, as usual. But we'll continue, and we would like to hear more about, say what might, because policy has been, appropriate policies also have been signaled as quite important to this. And I would like to hear from country perspective, because we should be doing kind of country perspective, versus, continental, policy, as was highlighted yesterday by the Africa Union rep. So let's hear from Botswana quickly on your, I would say, national country perspective before we move on. Thanks.
Thank you, Moderator. I'll give you a country perspective, but I'll try to broaden it up. The issue which I agree with Neil, that we have to learn from others and do our own way. The issue which we have to ask for ourselves, for example, right now, the Africa Free Trade, it focuses only on the issue of tariffs, but we are talking about the digital economy. The issue is, if you want people to trade online, what do they require to be able to trade online? If I want to do business with a company which is in Senegal right now, what do I only see? I see their website, their domain name. How do I have trust on that domain name and website? And those are the issues which are the baseline. Firstly, we have to be basically saying, how do we create that African market online? Which means that we have to have domains which can be trusted, which we have to have harmonized policies to say, we have harmonized our policies. We know if a company is registered as .org in Senegal, I know that what type of company. If a company is registered as .co, this is the type of company I'm dealing with. So those are very, very crucial. One of the things which I observed is, give you a country perspective. In Botswana, for example, we have what we call the Electronic Communication and Transaction Act. And that act is in force. It allows basically the electronic recognition of electronic communication and transactions, allow for the formation of online contracts, and even for the provision of electronic signatures, secure ones, and the issue of online consumer protection. And sometimes when I looked at various countries, most of the African countries, because these things are based on the United Model laws, we all have the same laws. And the issue is, we have adopted these laws, but there is no framework of putting them into use. How do I form an online contract with a client which is in another country? Those are the kind of things which we have to put in place, because we now have to make sure that there are frameworks where I can recognize signatures which are coming from another country electronically, because those are the digital ID. The issue of digital IDs are very, very important. We need to actually have our own signatures, our own electronic ID, which we can go online and be able to use them so that we can authenticate our transactions. But those are the kind of things which are the baselines which we have to form. And to me, the domain name are going to play a critical role. We need to formulate policies which are basically going to address this thing. Or else the issue of cross-border, unless we actually harmonize our laws in legislation-wise electronically, and we make sure that all these things are in place, we will not be able to realize the fruit and benefit. The other thing which I just wanted to touch on, coming from a regulator, I have realized that as Africa, we have focused our effort more on the issue of access. Most of the regulators is about consumer saving access. But the crucial thing is, what are we giving them access to access to what? We have failed to deal with the issue of developing the local content and applications. Those are the ones which will drive consumers to go online. We have people who, of course, I can go and teach them to say, you can log on the internet. And then they ask me, after I logged on the internet, what should I do? Should I just go and watch Facebook, gossip switch on Facebook, which got no relevance to my day-to-day business? No. We have to make sure that the services which are local, they are actually the ones online. That's when people can go online. At one forum, I told people that, you know what? If we are not careful, we'll keep on building the access network as Africa for somebody else to use it. And that is a reality. Today, you provide a 20 megabit and you say it's enough. Tomorrow, the guy who's using it now changes and put a high definition content. It means that that content, that access which you have provided is no longer big enough. You have to build another one. You increase the capacity and the cost, where do you pass the cost to the end user? But the question which I'm putting to you is, I think one of the things which is linked to the domain name is the issue of us developing our own African local content and application. Those is what will require, and that is what will drive the price down. That is what will drive access and penetration.
Thank
thank you very much for those aspects you highlighted, especially the stress on local content development. We will certainly come back on that because we are talking about domain name here. Apart from domain name, we also have this in terms of this what microcritical resources, you know, the IP addresses, and now we'd like to hear more from AFRINIC. You know, how is Africa doing in terms of, you know, IP address consumption? We hear that here is the last place where we still have a pool of IPv4, and whereas we also need to all kind of migrate to IPv6. What are we doing exactly? Where is Africa on that?
Okay, thank you. So as AFRINIC, as I mentioned earlier, our approach in terms of this conversation is from the IP side. And the initiatives that we are involved in terms of this, as a stakeholder on the IP side, is one thing that is key that we support is the infrastructure side in terms of DNS. So we have a DNS support program whereby we talk to, which is immediately available to CCTLDs. So we approach CCTLDs, we host their, like a secondary name server for their side. And the significance of this is we want resiliency in terms of DNS. I guess that's the first approach from our side. So, and the second approach that we have in terms of IP, because now, yeah, IPv4 is, we are reaching out, I think, the second phase of our exhaustion side. So it's something we've thought about, and from our capacity building, we have a capacity building department. We're really pushing IPv6 training and awareness. So it's involved both. It can be local training where our engineers come into the country, and you know, we make noise about it and say, okay, guys, come in, and yeah, we're training you on this. And the second part also, now we're doing e-learning in terms of that. And there's also I had mentioned yesterday, as we have an IPv6 certification program. So it's sort of like an incentive to make more engineers come in and adapt IPv6. And also in terms of, you had mentioned on the policy side, as stakeholders, we have a unit that we try to engage governments. We have a government working group. So we are involved in the forums that governments are in terms of things like IGF, you know, so that we know as an organization, we are not left behind in terms of those conversations. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, but I think Nii wanted to react to this because I don't know whether we all know it, because Nii definitely has been there. When you talk about AFRINIC, he knows what is happening within, and he's been one of the founders of this. So Nii certainly has something to share on this consumption.
I just wanted to make an observation that even when we migrate to V6, we do seem to have need for V4 to a certain degree. And so it's not obvious that the need for V4 will disappear, and not so suddenly anyway. And with that comes the comment that, you know, you might say you have in AFRINIC a few V4s left, but in actual fact, you have the tiniest allocation of /8s in V4. I mean, compared to, let's say, ARIN, who may have almost 10 times yours. So there's a certain imbalance, even though it appears like you've been slow in your uptake, but the total you have actually is minuscule. So it's an unfair pressure on you from that point of view, and I thought I needed to get that out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nii, for this one, because it's also provoking actually, and I think Nii's here for that. There's also talking about resources. The hosting of instances of the root server, for instance. What's the situation in Africa? Who want to take that one? How many countries in Africa, for instance, has gone through that route? For hosting, copies of the root servers.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'd forgotten to mention that. So, as AFRINIC, I'll get back to you on the numbers. I'll have to confirm that. We have a root server copy program whereby we facilitate the hosting of a root server in countries, on maybe in IXPs and things like that. So the challenge for us running this program, because we allocate budget for that, but the challenge has been because it's been running in parallel with that. We approach ICANN. So the challenge has been when doing the formalities, there are some requirements whereby you have to have V6. Some of the people who approach us to host a root server copy, they're running in ISPs which have already not adopted V6. So it's an initiative that we are really pushing. We have a few challenges which we are learning from. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, so we don't know the numbers of countries hosting instances of the copy root, but the map exists, and we know. Yeah. Okay. Just this question to also understand that there are some prerequisites actually to when we are talking about digital economy, and what are the opportunities there. Now, we've been stressing on content development and local content development. I would like to link this a little bit to the domain name, industry at some point. And I'll start with a question that was put to me yesterday by one of the participants, outside that room, was, why do I need a domain name, actually? That was his question to me. So I would like our panelists to tell us briefly what they think about it. Why do I need a domain name? No? Okay, Nii will answer. Nii will answer anything anyway. But okay, Nii will start and then, yeah.
Why do I need an address, a street address? Why do you need one? And why do you need a telephone number? And so asking me why do I need a domain name is like forcing me to say I don't need it. And I take offense to that, especially in this forum. I think we should position ourselves to have national address, have regional address, and have global address, especially for the businesses. And also, I believe in application development, less on content per se, but within the same domain. And for many of these applications or portals we are developing, we do see a good need to have, a domain name. And I like, many of us to move in that direction, whereby we are building nice portals for various solutions for the region, and get yourself good names that will attract or brand your company and also your clients as well. And every time you can slap on a .Africa name, I think you should, especially if you are supporting the free trade zone, show that you are willing to move across the whole region. And I think these are all good things. Now, what I'm trying to get at is that what may be happening in the rest of the developed economies, internet economies, need not be exactly the same thing that happens within our region. You are a late adopter. So if you've seen their mistakes, which has led to them not using domain names, for example, fix it. Fix it so that we can have a thriving domain name industry. So anyone who comes around and tells you that, oh, they don't use them there, so don't use it, please don't listen to them. Okay, try and find your own ways by which you can motivate your community to adopt it for the better of what, for example, they are saying about, public key infrastructure and so on. Okay, I mean, I think we need to find our own way by which we stimulate our industry. And if all your registrars were presumably as big as the ones overseas, there will be real competition. As it is now, there's no competition. Okay, so and I throw that back at ICANN. I mean, part of the objectives of ICANN is to increase competition. And I don't think the present state of registrars really is competitive with respect to Africa. And we should be asking you, what are you going to do about that? Why are these big registrars coming to work here when we cannot compete with them, even though we have registrars? So there are some anomalies that we need to be trying to address. And I like to posit that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nii, for this. And yes, Alice, please.
Thank you. I think I'll keep the mood of being negative here and cynical. And I really worry about looking at everything from a technology, that we can solve everything from a technology, that we should leapfrog everything that is technology related, despite, the fact that we are late bloomers. I think, and especially in relation, I mean, you mentioned it quite clearly that there are some things we should be learning from more developed countries and question ourselves, do we really need that for the Africa region? And I think that's more my caution. And, I think insisting that we all need domain names because others don't have domain names, I think we have to ask ourselves, what are we getting domain names for? It's the same question I ask with the reference to the rush to have digital identity. Why are we rushing to have digital identity if we haven't been able to solve all the issues that we claim digital identity is going to solve with legal identity? So how are we going to solve all the challenges we have with technology? We really can't solve. I mean, technology is not the panacea to everything. And I worry about us looking at it from that perspective. I think I'd rather more look at what our nuances are as the African continent, look at the context and actually decide, okay, do we really need this? So why do we need to leapfrog from one part of technology to another, or blindly copy technology without really questioning, how that is affecting us. And yes, I agree that, domain names are good for identifying yourself, for showing pride in being either African because you're .Africa, or, addresses and all, but we also have to look at, why exactly we are doing it. And those are important questions that we need to consider before we adopt technology generally, blindly. Thank you.
Thank you very much on that. Anyone want to take? Because I still have one or two questions to you. Yes, please.
Okay. I think she has raised very important questions. And as the data shows, us there's a problem in the market, in the domain market. And what the data is actually asking us is who are we creating these domain names for? So that's where we should start. Let us try to put, to deal with issues that are currently affecting our people, so that by the time we create domain names, we try to authenticate and create digital names, people are connected. If we focus on creating domain names and leaving these issues behind, we are also creating a problem, and we find ourselves there. Yes, we have done well. Today we have some registered domain names, but there are some critical issues that we have to deal with that are still left behind. And these issues, most of them can be dealt with, be dealt by regulatory organization and policymakers. One of the things that I normally ask is, we all know that at some point, there was a very interesting innovation that happened in Kenya, which is the mobile money. But because of lack of policies to actually adopt that innovation in Africa, we still have mobile money only being successful in Kenya, while the rest of African countries are left out. And a lot of Africans are still financially excluded. But when you look at where these mobile money platforms are doing well in Kenya, you find that almost 80 people can actually transact, send money, pay, and be insured. But what are we doing as Africans? Other African countries. So why can policymakers make sure that there is interoperability amongst all these things that we have so far? So that by the time we try to leapfrog into other things, we are okay with the first issues that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It seems that you don't have all the data concerning the mobile payment, yes, and that it's become popular, but maybe you don't have the data as a researcher. Yes, please.
Well, let me say, I do agree that technology has to address a problem. You should not adopt technology for the sake of adopting it. And I think it's very key that we do that. And one of the things which I think the earlier presenter, when he put the statistics, for example, one of the things which you look at is, look at the SMEs, how can we assist them? And one of the issues which we are talking about is, if we can assist, because you will find that most of the SMEs, one of the struggles which you find is accessing the market. How can they be able to sell their products online? And one of the things which we are talking about is helping them at least to have some domain name, which will be their digital identity, so that they can be able to sell their products online and people can know who they are dealing with. And that is the issue which we are putting across to say, you know what, domain names are critical in terms of creating your space. It's like having a real estate address to say, I'm located here, can you come and deal with me? So it is one of those things which we are looking at. But in terms of mobile money, Botswana is one of the countries which we are really using mobile money. I think our colleagues tomorrow will share with you in terms of the statistics which we are realizing here. And it is one of those things which is the unbanked society, they are basically using it. And it's actually being used even beyond only buying airtime, because they are actually using it for buying quite a lot of services and buying even a lot of utilities like electricity and everything. So it is actually, we are seeing that growth. And I think the most important thing is creating the policies which are more relevant to us as Africa, which can drive these products and services. And I think we are getting there. I do have a positive, a positive attitude that we are doing a lot as Africa. Is that we need to actually put our things together so that we can move forward. Because sometimes we focus on competition and we don't realize that we have to work as a unit rather than each and every country doing its own. Let's look at how can we you see, one of the things which lacks is the harmonization of our policies across the whole continent so that we can achieve this, the growth of the economy of Africa.
Thank you very much. Nii, you wanted to come on that before?
Yeah, I think this is an area that grows organically. So quite often, things like policy and development agenda will lag behind technology, whether we like it or not. And bear in mind that we don't have the domain names. So asking the question, what do we need it for, is like a joke, so to speak, because you don't have it. So you should be asking, why don't you have it? Okay, and then try to give it to you so you like it, then you tell your friend to like it. I mean, really, I think that's, for me, having suffered through this whole adoption of internet, that's the attitude that I kind of like. And also remember, there's nothing like leapfrog. They are fooling you. Because if you leapfrog, you pass certain things, and therefore you lose knowledge. You can't continue. You cannot continue if you leapfrog. Just remember that. But if you tunnel through fast, maybe you can remember some things and retain some expertise for the next layers that you want to go through. So I would just say that nobody says we should blindly, acquire technology, because usually it's by organic competitive measures. If it's not helping you, after you acquire it, you will not renew the domain name, okay? You will not renew it, okay? And so on. So the main thing is, let's remove the barriers, whatever you see them to be, so at least you can taste it. And if you taste it and it's not the right thing for you, you have a recourse. But as it is now, if we are not careful, we'll be talking and talking and talking, and you will not be adding domain names. So everybody here, immediately from here, go get yourself a .Africa name. If you don't like it, I'll buy it from you.
Thank you very much, Nii, and always provoking. Now I would like us to quickly come back to, we still have 5 minutes for this conversation. Coming back to this African Continental Free Trade Agreement, has been signed and then has been, is going to be operational in coming weeks. And bearing in mind also that we are talking about the domain name sort of industry here, I would like to know how much of a kind of collaboration, and for that matter, competition, I would say, exists within the current African CCTLD and registrars. Because we are talking of you guys certainly working, outside your borders. But I'd like to know, how is how are you collaborating, for instance, or eventually, what might be the prerequisite, and bear in mind, again, that African free trade agreement.
Okay, for me, as usual, I think this is just beginning, right? Because the CCs have been working, looking at one geographic region, okay, and we are just beginning to see cases where people living in other places are showing interest in acquiring names in other places. And I think that's therefore a good timing for the Africa Free Trade Zone from that point of view. So if registrars can become, let's say, EPP attached to several other CCTLDs, that will help the cause. And that's for like getting local addresses where maybe your initial business office is. But for the purpose of your doing the business across the region, it is always healthy. And for the purpose of the regional business, it is also very healthy to have a regional address. And I like to encourage that as well. But that means that all the registrars should also get themselves connected to .Africa registry. And then we will be able to address that. But I think it's just the very beginning now that we are moving away from country names to names being registered from other locations within the region, and eventually regional names.
Thank you very much. We do have CCTLDs in the room. Maybe they would like to take that question later on, expand on it. We haven't touched upon some other issues such as, the financing mechanism, for instance. When we are talking about digital economy, that's fundamental. And that's something we do call, the fintech, for instance. What's the situation in Africa today in terms of, development of fintech, and then what a facility, for assessing, funding mechanism? Anyone want to share?
I would say the fintech industry is currently growing in Africa, and we kind of find a lot of innovations. But some of the innovations are mostly, we find them within the digital space. And as per my prior argument, I think one of the fintech industry or one of the fintech innovation is the mobile money platform. But we failed, I would still say, as Africa failed to leverage on that platform to allow for transactions across borders. So that is one of the things. Yes, mobile money can be doing very well, or the fintech industry doing very well within countries, but the fact that we cannot transact internationally, it becomes a problem. And most cases you find that a lot of fintechs are not growing, mostly because of, let me admit, I'm more from policy, and I'll be talking more of policy issues. So it's not, most of fintech industry are not developing mostly because of issues of policy. For instance, you find that in Kenya, there's a time when Safaricom was the only provider of mobile money. It took a very long time to get to a point where we now have interoperability across all operators. Now we're still having the same thing in other countries that I'm not so sure about Botswana, but I don't know if it's still yet possible to transact from Orange Botswana to Mascom Orange mobile money in Botswana. I'm not so sure about that. But one of the things that I know is that we are still having issues with transacting internationally with some of the platforms that are developed within Africa. But mobile money, like I said, we did a study and it showed that mobile money is one way that we could allow for transactions or to happen or to actually, for transactions to be conducted in Africa and to financially include a lot of those who are excluded. Thank you.
Okay. And then we'll
as a quick rejoinder there, as a former regulator, I was on the board of directors of the Communications Commission of Kenya when M-Pesa was launched. And I truly believe that one of the reasons why it was quite successful is the fact that we did not regulate it at that point. If I recall, as the board of directors, we simply said to Michael Joseph, please just go ahead, implement it. And my former boss, the Dr. Vitangen Demo, said, if you break the law, we'll let you know. Because we really didn't, by then, the question was which regulatory jurisdiction did it fall? So was it communications or was it finance? And I think these questions are going to be extremely important as we implement the Africa Continental Free Trade Zone. We are going to have to ask ourselves, what level of regulation do we need? And I'll go back to what my colleague from BOCRA was saying here, that I think we have to tread carefully in terms of, okay, do we need regulation? Do we need soft regulation? Do we need what policy frameworks? It's not simply just eliminating tariffs. There's so much more in ensuring that we are creating a conducive policy and regulatory and environment. And sometimes that means really not being strong in some areas and being really strong in others. Having said that, though, when you look at mobile money right now, there's a new study that has come up. I was trying to find it. I can't find it, but I'll share it. That says that contrary to what we believed or many studies claim, it hasn't really been that effective in eliminating what we originally hoped it would do, helping reduce poverty, especially at the bottom of the pyramid. And in fact, if anything, some of the apps that have come up, like M-Shwari and others, lending apps especially, tend to be predatory. And so that's why it's extremely important. And for me, this is going to be my closing remark, is that the way Africa adopts the digital economy is going to actually prove to us whether it's going to empower us as Africans or take advantage of us. I think, and those are the two things we need to consider, while we move in this journey. Is it going to be empowering us, or is it going to be taking advantage, of us? Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Nii, before we open up to the audience, please.
Very quick. This issue of cross-border, don't beat the mobile money people too hard, because remember, it's tied to fiat. It's tied to sovereign currencies, okay, to an extent. So I don't know how suddenly Kenyan shillings become cedis. So this barrier will disappear when you begin to assume a common currency, okay? And then it will be possible to create what we call in the crypto world side chains, okay? So that you could, work across the currency domain. So I think that's important to understand. It's not only fintech that are opportunity here. Indutech, or whatever you call it, industry-related technologies involving the IoT things may also be opportunity for some of you, because you can now tell your clients, get a domain name, and then we can pipe all your data onto your domain, and then you can see your performance, idle time, and loading, and so on and so forth in the industrial world, because we can track these things either by counting them or by doing RFID or things like that. I'm saying we have to get a bit creative in that area. Now, regarding funding mechanisms, I'm glad the issue that was raised. Sometimes these loan things can be predatory. And so when it becomes like that, you move to the crypto world, you'll be fine.
Okay. Right. Yes, I think I would like to now open the floor, because we really would like also to hear from the audience, and have any comments or questions, to our panelists quickly. And I don't know, do you have any remote? Yes, maybe let's take remote one, and then yes, Barak.
Okay, I will read the questions from remote participants. The first question is from Abdul Karim Oloyede from Nigeria, and it's directed to Dr. Mothobi. How does research ICT validate their data? This is because for us researchers working on internet connectivity in Africa, it seems the data you get depends on where you look. That is the first question. The second question, again from Abdul Karim, is to Mr. Kepaletswe. Digital economy continues to grow, and it's fueled by increasing social interactions, economic activities, and transactions online. The use of mobile-based financial transaction platforms has grown exponentially, and digital financial applications have grown. However, it seems necessary regulation seems to be lacking to protect the masses. What and how are the regulatory agencies working with registrars to bring down scammers using the digital world to defraud the masses? Those are the two questions.
Yeah, and then we'll go back from the room, and then okay, my left. Yes, please.
Thank you, Pierre. It's Mohammed from PCH. I would like just to respond to
which Mohammed?
Mohammed B. Mohammed 2. Sorry, Mohammed 1. Yeah. Thank you, Pierre. I'd like just to respond to a question you raised earlier regarding root servers hosted on instances in Africa. So I just have some details. I mean, from Packet Clearinghouse, currently we have root servers in instances in 28 African countries, and specifically those are D-root and E-root. D-root is that's managed by the University of Maryland, and E-root, which is managed by NASA. And those are, I think it's exceeding 50% of the African countries have currently root servers instances hosted there. Those root servers instances are hosted in 37 internet exchange points on those 28 countries. And in terms of IXPs, there's good numbers. I think we have 78 IXPs in Africa. But if we look to the total internet exchange points numbers in the world, I think we're still lagging behind. There's about 955 global IXPs. So there's still lots of room to be of internet exchange points to be built locally. But in terms of root servers, I think we're doing well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. Okay, let's move. Okay, yes, go there. Take you and then I'll come.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tutwani. I'm an academic from Botswana. A few years back, when some African countries joined the international cable system, like the West African cable system, the East African cable system, there was a hope that the internet connectivity would go up with access prices improving. But that doesn't seem to be the case from the stats we just received. So what really went wrong?
The last one from here. Okay, let's move that way. Okay. Yes, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I was just to maybe react to about the relationship between registrar and registry in order to help in increasing African digital economy to be effective in Africa. I think something is very important because internet is ways that we can reach the people from diaspora. And diaspora, how do you say, make a lot of amount of money coming to Africa and helping for the development of the investment and also for the families. But problem is to get connected with the grassroots. That's very important. It's why it's very important that we have a strong register infrastructure inside Africa to be able to give the opportunity to diaspora to use internet to be connected with this investment inside their country, so they can follow and maybe they can also spread not only on the national level but on the regional level. Because when you are talking about business, you are about economy is investment. And we know that we have small markets nationwide, but if we look at the regional perspective, it's very interesting to further investment. The second point is about, we are looking about how the free trade zone can help to have a single digital economy. We are talking about, how to say, the payment, e-banking, e-money, the money transfer, all that. That's very important that also we can help on that, because internet is a very, very, very powerful tool to help the people who have to get the information for the good rates to make the transfer or something like that. I think there is a lot of things that we can do, helping also on the international remittance. Now is something that only owned by something like Western Union. I don't know, so some big company like that. What about Africa? We can, I think, move on this issue also. Not not having M-Pesa in Kenya only, but I'm dreaming about M-Pesa at the African level. Why not? I think that there is a lot of opportunities that we have to talk about. I think that the registrar and the registries can help on that, and also the generic top-level level at the regional level, like .Africa. So let's think about that, and maybe we can have some. I'd be very interesting to have the output from the panelists of these points. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. These are good points. Yes. Oh, the lady first.
You said the lady first.
Yeah, first the lady. Okay, go ahead.
Good day. I think mine is somewhat inclined to differ with, I would say maybe a unionization of the currency, because that is when now we're going to be forced to go on to issues of policy. Because now we're looking at, individual national currencies. But I bank with, for example, FNB, and I can go to a different bank and still be able to draw my money. I don't need to be operating under one bank for me to be able to get my money. So I think much of our attention should be rather directed towards finding a common platform that enables us to interchange money amongst these different apps that we have. Even when I travel from here to maybe South Africa, as long as the bank there offers visa facilities, I'm able to still get my money in the bank that I don't even its name. So why don't we come up with a platform that will accept visa for all these mobile money platforms? If it's, let's say, if it's Orange Money, if it's MyZato, some mobile money platform, they can integrate to this single point and it's as a single tier for all of these platforms. And I think again there was an issue raised here on trust, to say that DNS can help people trust and this and that. That I understand, and I don't have a problem with it, but I'm 1% and probably the whole of the truth. We buy our applications from Google Play. And once you see an app on Google Play, you don't really go to the publisher's information, go to their domain name, and then say, is it from Slovakia, is it from Iran, is it from anywhere? You know that the very fact that it is within Google Play is something that you can trust. Why? Because of the Google Play Protect. So it is not just enough for us to buy the domain from authorized registrars. It calls for us to have some sort of assurance point to say, once you find this application here, it has been taken through the screening process, it has been verified that there's nothing harmful within it. And that is when now we will really have the issue of trust. So domain name assignment on its own, it's not enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's put it over there. We'll come back to you.
My name is Stuart. I wanted to ask, what are you doing to inform SMEs about .Africa? And also, are you working with any organizations to inform these SMEs or just the general public about .Africa? And also, I have an addition to that. If you are working with ISPs or any organization, what are you really telling them? What are you telling them to tell the public about these .Africa?
Okay. Yes, we'll come back to you, and then we'll move to the left, please.
Thank you very much. A very quick questions to the panel, and maybe also just to point out that on the free trade area argument, I think government are saying for the first time they moved faster than private sector. So just a point to think about. But very quickly, I have a question which I would like maybe two opinions about. Maybe the first one would be to hear what Alice says about the role of big tech in supporting content development, especially local content. Do they have a role? And maybe also hear what Professor Nii thinks about the same, whether this is a role that big tech needs to play a role in. So that is on that. And the second one is to Ria on how they're using this research to, influence policy or to make policymakers aware as they develop policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Let's move to the left. Yes, madam. Oh, at last.
Mine is just a straightforward question, maybe directed towards the AFRINIC guy about IPv6 and IPv4. Some regions have actually totally migrated, and you are saying that you're only just starting to train people in IPv6. Do you have any, an estimate of when we in Africa will be able to eventually migrate, or it's not your thing, or it just doesn't really matter, or we're just gonna stay with IPv4 for forever?
Thank you. And anyone else to my left? They are tired. Left is up here.
Hello, everyone. It's me again. My question is, as there is a .Africa domain, currently, how many of the civil society organizations are actually using this domain? That is all.
Thank you very much. And then I will then leave it to my panelists to respond to questions and any comments they may have. Who want to start? Yes, Botswana.
Well, let me start with the issue of from the remote participant with regard to the issue of protection of consumers. One of the things which we have to realize, I think, is the issue of the various stakeholders have to work together. You will find that Morris, for example, the domain name right now is under our ministry, which deals with transport and or communication. But the issue of e-commerce in terms of protection of consumers, more especially for people who may be selling products which are not the scammers online and everything, is one of those things which are earlier when I talked about the harmonization of the policies. You will find that each and every national transaction, it does what we call protection of consumers online. However, there is no framework which has been established. For example, if I buy a goods from one country and I'm not happy, when I return them to that shop, because I bought them online, I want not to return to that shop. If that shop does not take them, whom do I go to? And one of the things which you are talking about is we need to actually create a regulatory framework, not about communication regulatory framework. From an e-commerce side, create a framework where now the stakeholders, when you do this issue of consumer protection, you know which regulatory institution in that country you can now report the matter to. Because that is the one which can create trust in terms of online. And currently, that is one of the things which is breaking. And we actually need to make sure that these things are in place. And it goes on with which now our colleague was talking about in terms of Google, that it has created that tool. What we are talking about is, let's have a framework, people can have confidence that when I go on to the companies which have gone through this mill, which are under this framework, they actually have gone through that process. I can trust them. And that's what we are looking for. I can only rely, let's not talk about apps. What about if it's not apps? We want to buy apples online. There is a company which is on the website, say I'm selling apples. But how do you trust that company which is selling apples? That is a company which is human, and if you cannot do it, there is a mechanism where you can go for. So this is what we are looking about, is now creating that framework so that people can actually be able to buy products online and knowing that there is a mechanism which they trust. And this is what we are calling for in terms of that. Our colleague also talked about the issue of that there's been investment on the international bandwidth connectivity. Yes. And we do realize that the prices have not come down to the right level where maybe the consumers can say we are happy. Of course, they did reduce the price in terms of international bandwidth. But one of the things which I think when people make the investment on the international bandwidth is they forgot that they also there to be same investment which has to be made on the access network, which now connect the consumers to those international bandwidth. And that is one that you realize that most of the time, it's as much as the price of coming down, it does not come down significantly to yes to what the consumers are saying it's not. And that's the which I earlier on indicated that, you know what, you will find that the consumer demands also change. Earlier on, we were able to satisfy consumer demands with a 512. But right now, you can't. It now requires to accept 10 meg, which means that the cost of providing that, as much as it has come down, he still realized that no, this is relatively expensive. So those are the kind of things which is, there are significant investment which has to be continuously made, and we need to work on that. And one of the things which we can reduce the cost of providing ICT is to try to localize as much as possible the local content and application, because we reduce the cost of going outside, while that is why we are talking about regional internet exchanges, because you can localize most of the content and you can reduce costs. And I do agree that there's still a lot of work that should be done, but I think we need to work together, and we are getting there slowly but slowly.
Fully. Okay, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think, let me start by thanking one of the gentlemen who spoke there about, we called it taking a visa for the mobile money. And, that's how we can manage to actually change Kenyan shillings into cedis. The mobile money platform, if we kind of develop policies, we can do it. The same way that we are doing with banks, we can actually have a mobile money platform for Africa where we can transact internationally. And of course, this will need a lot of development in terms of regulations, central bank, in collaboration with the regulatory, the competitive regulatory authorities. It's possible if we want to do it. Then another question, I think from an online listener is that how do Research ICT Africa validate their data? How do we validate our data? We conduct national representative surveys. And in conducting these national representative surveys, we conduct them with National Statistics Office. In some cases, we conduct them with both national statistics and regulatory authorities. And through the help of the National Statistics Office, we get enumeration areas, and we make a sample, which is a national representative sample for both urban and rural areas, to ensure that the estimates that we get from the survey can be used for the whole population. And then after that, having created a survey, we then create weights, which allows us to weight the sample to the whole population. So that's how we make sure that the estimates that we get from the surveys are kind of representative of what's happening in the population. And of course, we know that there have been some arguments, especially, I don't know, maybe because of the love of our countries. Some people, when they are told that internet penetration in their country is low, they don't want to agree with that, and they argue and all sorts of things. But honestly speaking, we can only have data, and we can only have statistics. And that's how we should try by all means to make sure that we inform our policies using data. Today we are saying data is the oil of digital economy. The same way, data should be the basis of our policy. So another question was, there have been so much investments made in fiber networks. I think today Botswana is kind of connected to the easy and the works. And it was expected that the data prices will go down and a lot of people will be connected. Then why is that we are still having most of African people not connected? And this is one of the issues why, as Research ICT Africa say, rather than focusing on the supply side estimate, also look at the demand side of the issues. Of course, we can connect the whole of Botswana and make sure that there's 4G everywhere in Botswana. But now, if we don't understand the characteristics of people who will be taking up that service, we'll never go anywhere. Our survey that was done in 10 African countries shows that one of the major indicators of internet uptake is because it's issues of affordability, which remains back to pricing. And the pricing issue relates to issues of competition in the market. Is the data market competitive enough to actually lead to reduction in prices? Then another issue is affordability of devices. A lot of people in Africa still do not have computers, but some, because of cheap smartphones, they have smartphones. But unfortunately, they cannot be able to pay for high data prices. And that is why today, whenever you get the only place where you find access to public Wi-Fi, the first thing, like that was what was said by Minister yesterday, yes, she said there is a demand for the internet. People want to be on the internet. Whenever they go anywhere, they want what is the password for the internet, for the Wi-Fi. That shows that there's a demand for the internet, but there are issues in the market that are actually inhibiting them to be on the internet. So I mentioned one of those issues is affordability, to lack of devices, to the lack of skills or lack of awareness. A lot of people still do not use internet. A lot of people in the world still do not know how to use internet. And our survey shows that, I'll take South Africa, that almost, even though South Africa has one of the highest penetration among the surveyed countries with 53% internet penetration, the 47% that is not connected are low-income earners. So it goes back to other issues of affordability. Most of them don't have devices. So I think I have answered all the questions that were asked.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, there's a question that was asked was, how do we then use this data that we collect to kind of influence policy? Let me say, as Research ICT Africa, we have been collecting survey data, I think, since 2007. And then we did another survey in 2012. And then we did latest survey in 2017. And first, we give our data to ITU. Two, we write state of ICT policy reports, which are online on our website. This year, we have written a state of ICT reports for Nigeria, for Kenya, for South Africa, and then we also have a comparative report for all the countries, comparing all countries that we have done studies, surveys in. And then we also will be releasing informal sector ICT report, which should be released, I think, next month. So that is how we try to influence policy. We also participate in a number of regulatory issues. We get invited by regulatory authorities to come and inform them on a number of issues relating to the ICT sector. Yeah, that's how we kind of try to influence. And then we also make the data public. Our data is public. It can be accessed in the Data First website, which is hosted at UCP. And all this other information that we're talking about is also public. It can also be accessed publicly. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice, any question or any comments before I move on?
Yeah, yes, thank you for the question. I'll answer the one regarding the role of big tech in supporting content development. And I think big tech is already doing that in a really massive way. As we see, for example, when you look at statistics again, Facebook, over 70% of the users of Facebook are based in the Africa and the Asia region, and most of them do produce and share user-generated content. The question we should be asking is, how we deal with that. Then, if you look at Google, I think they operate in nearly 200 centers and with nearly 100 languages, local languages. So that's another way that big tech is helping in developing local content. But I see for the future, we are going to more likely see, social media becoming, the vehicle with which content is developed in this region. And we're going to see more and more personalized content with organizations like, Amazon and Google, and especially when it comes to video. I think the big question would be then, how do we deal with that, especially in this age and time where we are all grappling with, misinformation, disinformation, and how do we ensure, for example, especially our governments that are usually the largest creators and holders of the largest local content. And I think that is the most important thing, is digitizing a lot of our government and ensuring that a lot of our government content is online, because that's the most important thing. Because once that happens, then I think it automatically creates lends to engaging the digital economy in so many ways, and we begin to look at all the other issues in terms of affordability, accessibility, and digital skills, so that then citizens are able to access, government content. Because that, when we're talking about government content, we're usually talking about issues to do with livelihoods and really specific, public service-related content. The worry then, though, is, especially when we refer to big tech, is the whole of this rush in terms of the realization that numbers in developed countries are dwindling, and so they're looking at the so-called next billion, and the next billion is going to be coming. They're looking at the Africa region. Yes, agree. And as I said, the way we engage with big tech and the digital economy generally is really going to determine whether we are going to be empowering ourselves or exploiting, Africa. So I think that's a question that we need to really, consider. And I agree with the issue regarding trust. Again, that relates to local development as well. And a big issue that Mozilla has been spearheading, to talk a little bit about that, is the lack of what we call common voice, and the fact that many machines do not recognize, for example, local African languages, or even when we speak English, they do not recognize our accents. Sometimes, depending on your accent, if you ask Siri something, Siri will not respond. She or he does not understand. because you're either speaking English or whatever other language. And I think it's extremely important that we begin to look at our own local languages and perhaps come up with a way of creating our own repository of our own languages, and how that can then be used effectively to create and build our own digital economy. So that's also extremely important. I think those were the several questions. Yes, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alice, for that. And, now yes, Nii?
Actually, the music is beginning to sound very good. On the first issue of consumer protection, my advice is we should consume locally, consume near you. Don't jump all the way to space and consume in space, because then the app will be too big for you. In other words, we like too much importation. Recently, I heard of somebody who imported pizza from London to eat. I think we should get serious, okay? So that's one. On the cable system and the high prices, affordability issue, actually, you are doing very well. In 1993-94, when I first connected Ghana to the internet, for 9.6, here these prices, 9.6 kilobits, not mega. I used to pay $7,500 a month for one half circuit. That time we were not talking about full link or half circuit. For the other half, I was paying £5,000 plus VAT, and I did not live there. So when I hear your numbers, I think you are doing very well, okay? You are doing very, very well. So rather, we should be encouraging our regulators and our operators to move quickly, okay, and maybe diversify, go to the areas which are not covered and so on and so on. I can say that we are in good shape. I actually was very excited about the reference of the diaspora, because they are an important part of our economy and our ecosystem. And I think we should be doing everything possible. And I know that Africa is looking at that particular community as well. So on the Western Union and issues, we should begin to lobby our policy authorities, because there are some hefty licensing issues ahead of us in that area, which we will need to address. The other thing I can touch on regarding big tech, I think we need to balance market capture and development. Okay, and I like the comment that Alice made, because there's role for everyone. We run an open economy. On the other hand, we also want to be part of the supply side and also be part of the consumption side. And some of these companies indeed do have big muscle, and it's not very difficult for them to take a beautiful idea from a young entrepreneur and just replicate within a matter of days and blow the person away. Sometimes these stores that you talk about, something play and a store and all those things, they even deprecate your applications because they move forward on the API. And for you have to now struggle to figure out what a new API is. But meanwhile, your application has been taken off the store. So it's not that straightforward. I thought I might point at that as well. Now, if you really are interested in .Africa domain, I think if you go to, I believe it's registry.africa, you will learn a lot about it. But I'm sure that some of my colleagues are here, so they will be able to fill you in some more. I think that addresses my questions.
Thank you. Yes, AFRINIC.
To the lady who asked the question about IPv6. So it's more of a point of clarification. What we started recently was the online. So the online trainings, but the on-site trainings have been happening for a number of years. So we've really been trying to build capacity in that area. It's just that the numbers are not really good in terms of V6 adoption. They are growing. We've noticed over the years, the numbers are growing. And this has to do with things like, one of you, you're sitting here, you have 2 or 3 devices connected to the internet. I guess that is what is making an improvement in terms of adoption. Yeah. I hope I've answered your question. Okay.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank all for these contributions. I think the theme itself was kind of, can be interesting actually, but let me quote one of our panelists, saying that, well, this is just a beginning, that we'll be talking about putting domain name, and we'll be talking on developing the digital economy in Africa. It's important that we also have the ability to continue this discussion. But a few things have actually been discussed, and then full of lesson learned, but also what may be the prerequisite actually if we to see a thriving digital economy in Africa. I'm not going to cite them all, but importantly, I noted that things such as consuming local, developing local data came here, and also the use of local languages, for instance. And by the way, talking on that one, I think we had, or maybe it's going to be later on, there's a session on ICANN, which is also going to tell about what are the possibilities here, in terms of having your own scripts, so that you are possibly, you should now also on the internet. We started with Ethiopia. Ethiopia now has its own scripts, and then can be working on the internet. Of course, we cited the Arabic word as well, the Northern Africa, it's not a problem. ICANN wanted also to start with this Eastern African sort of language, Swahili, so that we see how one could also work on those scripts. So things are possible if you are talking about, your local languages. I also heard things like we need to balance, global with local, especially when dealing with big tech, companies that have all the resources. By the way, we know that some labs on artificial intelligence have been started in Africa by those big tech. Questions should be, how are actually countries also, developing this, knowing that some of them may not even have the resources that you need to do those things. But at least I think you put it well. Defining the relationship we are having with big tech is going to be important also if we are going to kind of develop this. So many things, policy, and also the data collection, the integrity of the data is quite important. All of those things has been cited. We didn't touch that much on competition and all of those things because certainly, as Nii was saying, it's a beginning. It's a beginning, but we need to hear more from our DCTLD, registrars, how they are actually collaborating, but also competing. Actually, this is something which is key. Well, all good, and really, I'd like to thank you all for the contribution. And with that, there is no urgent question or matter. I'd like you to kind of thank our panelists and round of applause to them. And also to ourselves, because we deserve also our lunch after all of this.